Hey legends, we have our first major buy round, round 13, and hopefully you've been preparing for this for a few weeks now, because I think if you have, you should be pretty well prepared to cover the 13 players that you need on the park. But if you haven't, you're probably going to feel like this guy, realizing that you have a whole bunch of players that just aren't playing this weekend, and you will likely burn through a whole bunch of trades. Now, that's probably the critical piece over the next few weeks is trades. Now, for me personally, I am sitting on, I think, 11 and not intending to make any trades this week. Mostly because it's not just this round that we need to be thinking of, but also the tricky round 14 games next week, where you've got the Roosters, the Raiders, and the Dolphins all out on a bye. And a lot of the players that I would be really keen to bring in this week, I have to weigh up, is it worth it, given that I already have 6 players from either the Roosters, the Raiders, or the Dolphins. So if I bring in, a Tedesco or an Aitken this week, then that just means that I'm going to put myself under even more pressure next week to make sure that I've got 17 available players to play. So with all that in mind, let's get into it. Okay, so buy period. So this is the point of the season where we do need to be thinking about not just this round, round 13, but also what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. The great news is, teams like the Tigers here, they're out on the bye in round 13 and then have this amazing run from next week. Now in round 14, I'm probably going to be targeting players like Samuela Fainu and also Big Stefano from the Tigers. You've got Api Coruscant, so they're probably the 3 on my radar for next week. But obviously there's no point really bringing them in this week because they're out on the bye. Now looking at the Titans, you've got David Fifita out this week, but could be a decent option for a couple of weeks here. Plays the major buy round in 16 here. Relatively easy to cover for round 17, and then you get potentially him for the rest of the season as well. So that's the sort of thing that we need you to be focused on when you're making trades. The Dolphins, like I said earlier, very tempting to bring in a Dolphins player here. But then, along with the Roosters, the Dolphins are out and the Raiders are out. So currently, I'm carrying 4. If I go in and bring a Tedesco and a Ewan Aitken, then all of a sudden that would take me up to 6. And next week, I would have to sell at least 2 of those guys, plus some of the Origin players that don't necessarily back up from Origin, just to be able to get 17 on the park. So that's something we've got to be very conscious of. If you're going to bring in a player, they really have to have enough points that it makes it worthwhile for them to be included. What are you giving up by selling, and what are you gaining from buying? So just keep that in mind. This is a great little reference tool. We do like these players, a couple of Sharkies, you've got Penrith, they've got a nice little buy period. The Doggies we like, they do have this standalone buy by themselves in round 15, so we do need to cover that. And then they go on another good run until round 19. So realistically, in round 15, you're probably looking to sell your Salmons, your Sam Hugheses. Maybe you hold on to a Reed Marnie through until round 19. So there's some of the things that, like I said, you really have to be conscious of. Let's keep moving. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys the who's hot, who's not, and just give you some of my thoughts and opinions on those. We will talk about a couple of the players in this buy, hold, sell video as well. Let's start with who's not, and I can understand why people are selling Nicho Hynes. He will miss a substantially large number of games between now and round 19, especially if he's still showing some signs of calf soreness. I think he's really going to be nurtured and rested, essentially so he can play State of Origin and then be available for the run home. Now, the Sharks have got themselves into an absolutely awesome position. They're currently number 1 on the table. And I think the reality is, without Nicho Hynes, they are going to absolutely struggle. So they need their main man, and I think they will rest him and be prepared to sacrifice some wins. And if that means resting Nicho Hynes, then I think the Sharkies will absolutely do it. I'm probably not as enthusiastic to sell an Angus Crichton. I think he has the potential to back up. The only watch out there is he's obviously going to miss round 14 anyway. The Roosters have the bye, and then he'll play 15. The only watch out for us with the Roosters is that they have such an awesome forward pack that they could easily cover Angus Crichton. Reuben Cotter, I don't think is a sell. I think the Cowboys are going to be desperate to get him back into the team. So I think the only thing that'll hold Reuben Cotter back will be injury, but other than that, I think he is a play. Xavier Willison, I can't understand as a sell. This is pretty much the period of time where you actually bought Xavier Willison to cover the Payne Hasses, the Paddy Carrigans. So I think from my point of view, Xavier Willison is a not a sell. I think he's definitely a hold. Chance, I reckon he's back next week. I wouldn't be selling him. Harry Grant is coming off the bench in State of Origin, so he won't play a full 80 minutes. In fact, he may get less than 40. So for me, he is pretty much, I'm going to say, a 75% chance of backing up in round 14. So that's my opinion. I could be wrong. He has had that issue where he had to go off to hospital this week, but I think come round 14, he will be fine. Brendan Piakura, I think he's a hold as well. He'll play round 14. I doubt very much he's included in State of Origin. I don't think he'll get any game time. Kick out, he is definitely a sell. Adam Fanua-Blake, I think he's a hold. He should be back round 14 and an awesome player. Reece Robson is a similar sort of story to Reuben Cotter, but given he will probably be doing a substantially large amount of work in that New South Wales team, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys actually leverage Jake Granville and give Robson a rest. So to me, that one is a 50-50. Sammy Hughes, I can't believe he's a sell. I think he is a hold for at least this week. And then you can consider what you want to do with him. Maybe even in round 15. Chevy Stewart, he's definitely a sell. Paddy Carrigan, 50-50. I guess it really depends on what your team looks like. Sean Blaw, look, some concerns with Sean Blaw. He will play in round 14. I wouldn't really be desperate to sell him, but definitely a couple of worrying signs, and there are some better options in that edge position. Maybe if you have the ability to upgrade to someone like a Fafita next week, I think that makes more sense than rushing Sean Blaw out of your team this week. Reece Walsh, I guess it's kind of the same scenario. If you're looking to upgrade to maybe a James Tedesco, then it probably makes sense. I don't think he's 100% fit. And I don't think the Broncos really need him to back up in round 14. So it wouldn't surprise me if Reece Walsh was actually rested in round 14. So for me, I can see some logic in selling Reece Walsh, but it really comes down to, what do you need in your team to get you through this bye period. Now, Jack de Belin, I think he's a decent buy without being amazing. I'm a little bit surprised, actually, he's the number one who's hot buy this week. And that's mostly because I think he's moving into the prop position. The Dragons don't necessarily have the best buy coverage. And I just think Jack de Belin's probably someone who'll come in and go out of your team again. I don't know if he is necessarily an awesome purchase decision. Ewan Aitken, on the other hand, I think he is a great buy, assuming that you can cover round 14. So you're buying him for round 13 and he won't play in round 14. Same sort of scenario with James Tedesco here. I reckon he's probably the buy of the week, just pending, can you cover his absence in round 14? Because he will be out in round 14 as well. Now, if you're like me, I already have 2 Raiders, 2 Dolphins, and 2 Roosters. So next week in round 14, when I've got to put 17 on the park, I'm going to have to sell at least 2 of them. So for me, it just doesn't make any sense to bring in another 2 because that would beef me up to 8 and I'd be forced to make 4 trades out, and it just doesn't make sense for me and my team this week. But I would absolutely love a Ewan Aitken and I'd absolutely love a James Tedesco. I think both of those players are in for a massive weekend this weekend. So if you're not sitting on a lot of Roosters, Raiders, or Dolphins, then I think purchasing Ewan Aitken or James Tedesco makes absolutely perfect sense. Brendan Hands, what I love about him is the price. I think he's only 230k, and we will talk about him in this video. The big question mark is how long has he got the position for, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Reed Marnie is looking like the best option for hooker right now. Maxi King, we talked about him last week. We'll talk about him again this week, but I still think he is a very good, consistent buy option between now and round 19. I think he gives you some really good flexibility in that mid position. David Armstrong, still a good buy, still decent value. Mitch Moses is back. I probably wouldn't be buying him this week. I really want to see how he comes back into that Parramatta Eels team. You know, he may even get some degree of rest if his fitness isn't 100% there. So one to watch this week, I reckon, and maybe just a wait and see. Now, the other thing with Mitch Moses is if he comes back and he looks absolutely amazing and New South Wales lose the State of Origin, then you could find Mitch Moses gets pumped back into that New South Wales team very, very quickly. Max Plath, still a pretty good option, but starting to get very expensive. Same with Joey Manu, so amazing player and will absolutely go nuts this weekend against the Cowboys. Probably not as good a buy given that Tedesco is still in the team, so he'll continue to play at centre. So in my opinion, probably not really a buy this week. Keep in mind he is also out next week. Dylan Brown, still pretty decent as a purchase. Jacob Carraz going on a little bit of a tear. I think he could be a decent buy as well. Nafahu White, I question this one. I just don't think the longevity is going to be there. He is playing some amazing footy, and I think he'll go okay this weekend, but keep in mind he will be out in round 14 as well. Scotty Sorensen, I think he is a decent buy, and Josh Curran, I'm about 50-50 on him. If he was in the starting side, I think he would be a better buy. I just don't think he's getting the minutes, and the way the doggies are using him, I just don't think is all that appealing. So there's some of my thoughts on the who's hot, who's not list. Let's get into to some of the players that we've selected this week for buy, hold, sell. But before we do that, just a quick reminder, here is the Blues team, here is the Maroons team. I'm pretty confident that that Luke Keary and Mitch Barnett will be available to play, along with Piakura and Mam in round 14. Obviously, they're both out on the bye this week. Very disappointed that that Matt Burton won't be available to play. I have him in Supercoach, and that was a little bit disappointing that he won't be released. Now, I won't go into these lists too much, but what I want you to do is just do a bit of a sense check over these lists about who is likely to back up. So, in my opinion, you know, Dylan Edwards, probably. To'o. Crichton, yes. Suoli, yes. Lomax, yes. Luai, probably. Nico Hines, I would say no, just because of that calf injury. Gerbo, probably 50-50. Reece Robson, I'm going to say no, but the Cowboys are desperate. Payne Haas, I'm saying probably no, just because I think the Broncos have some pretty decent depth in the forwards, and obviously they were able to get through that period when Payne Haas was actually injured. I really think it'll come down to how he and Paddy Carrigan bounce back, and I think that even if they both come in, they'll get limited time. Liam Martin, probably no. Angus Crichton is a 50-50 for me. McInnes, I'm probably going to say no. Yo, maybe, but I'm leaning towards no. And then Yo coming off the bench, I'm probably going to say yes, he does back up. In fact, most of this bench, I reckon, is likely to back up, and Burton will be there for sure. Reece Walsh, I'm going to say no, he won't back up. Coates, probably yes. Holmes, almost definitely yes. The Hammer, yes, I'm going to say yes. Talangi, yes. Tom Dearden, probably. Cherry Evans, probably. Ruben Cotter, I'm going to say 50-50, but more likely yes than no. Ben Hunt, I'm going to say yes. Lindsay Collins, he's a 50-50. Sewer, probably yes. Nana, yes. Paddy Carrigan is a 50-50. Harry Grant, yes. Fodawaker, yes. Hopgood, yes. Selwyn Cobbo, yes. And I think all of these guys as well will be available. So just think about, you know, are these guys likely to back up? Because if you've got them in your squad, someone like a Dylan Edwards, and you're confident he's going to back up after State of Origin, then don't be in too much of a rush to sell them, especially if you think they're going to be players that you want for the run home. You really just need to evaluate how many weeks are they going to be out and how much impact is it going to have to your team if A, you sell them, or B, you keep them. So just something to keep in mind. All right, now on to the actual buys. I've got James Tedesco here, 679k. I reckon that's pretty much about as cheap as we're ever going to see James Tedesco in 2024. He's been performing pretty strongly over the last couple of weeks with a 72, a 60, and a 69 last week. The great news is he is available in round 13, but is out in round 14. I reckon he's got a point to prove. And I think if you're getting him into your team this weekend, I think he would be an amazing captaincy choice as well. Now, unfortunately for Tedesco, now that Dylan Edwards is in the New South Wales team, I think he will maintain that position unless injured. So I think the likelihood of Tedesco being back in a Blues jersey in 2024 is very, very slim. So for me, Tedesco is a buy. Okay, so next is a player we've spoken about for a few weeks now, KO Weeks. Available half and wing fullback, just under the 500k mark with a -2 break even. Look, it's not the best choice. He's starting to get a little bit more expensive now. He will continue to make money, but has some amazing scores over the last few weeks, and I would expect that to continue for a few weeks to come. He's available in round 13, which we like, but he won't play round 14, and he won't play round 19. So you really have to start considering, if you're going to bring someone like a KO Weeks in, understand the dynamics on which rounds he will and won't be playing, and have a plan to move him on at some stage to maybe a Jerome Hughes or some other upgrade target in the future. So I reckon he's got the potential still to make an additional 100k, and he could be a handy asset to own over the next few weeks. Next up, Maxi King, another great captaincy choice this week. He'll do nothing amazing in terms of like a high score, but he will deliver some consistent points this week. You can probably bank somewhere around that 50 to 55 mark. 675k, so relatively decent value. And of course, he's got great buy round coverage, especially for the next few. So 13, 14, will play 16. Unfortunately, not 19. But the thing that Maxi King really gives us is that consistency and reliability in what is a pretty tumultuous couple of weeks in fantasy. So that's why we like Maxi King as a buy. Next up, his partner in crime at the Dogs there, Reed Marnie, available in hook. He is the number one hooker at the moment, so full props to Reed Marnie. He's really turned his season around in 2024 versus 2023, playing some really consistent footy, which we think is absolutely amazing. He's having a strong year, and I think if you need a hooker, so let's say you're going from a Joey Lussick who isn't named this week and you're looking for an option, then Reed Marnie is probably a great trade up option from a Joey Lussick, and is definitely a player we think deserves to be on the buy list. Let's keep moving. Alrighty, so next up we've got Jacob Preston. So Jacob Preston is starting to come back into decent form. We know he was injured for a while. You can see here before the injury, got some great scores. This 0 is a game where he was on the bench but wasn't used, and has slowly started to creep up in terms of his scoring potential. And I reckon he's probably close to being back to his best. And I think at this price point, it's a little bit of a discount, 629k. With his buy coverage, I reckon he could be a handy purchase at edge if you need to pick up an edge forward. Next up, we have Brendan Hands. Now, I'm not 100% convinced this is an amazing purchase. Obviously, we love the 230k price point. We love the dual half and hook. But my big question mark is, how long will Brendan Hands actually have the hooking position at the Parramatta Eels for? Are they just resting Joey Lussick? Will Lussick be back on the bench with Hands in round 14? There are just so many unanswered questions with Brendan Hands. Now, having said that, if you're prepared to take the risk, we do know that if he is able to achieve greater than 40 minutes, he does average 33.9, which is pretty decent. And obviously, at a 230k price point, he will make us some money if that's the direction you want to go in. For me, I'd rather be trading up, so into someone like an Appy Coruscant next week, as opposed to down to a Brendan Hands this week. But it really comes down to, again, what you're looking for and what you need in your team. Okay, onto the holds, and Dylan Edwards is the number one fullback in the game. Look at these points here: 58, 66, 58, 62, and 70. Absolutely phenomenal over the last 5 weeks. From my point of view, if you can afford to hold Dylan Edwards, absolutely do it. We know he is pretty expensive, but a lot of the buys that he's going to miss anyway. And I think there's a fairly high degree of chance that Dylan Edwards backs up from State of Origin. So for me, Edwards is a hold. Trey Fuller, I reckon he's a hold for this week. He might even be a hold into round 16. I'm holding him this week and will probably look to move him on next week. That break even is starting to creep up a little bit. He does have some amazing scores, which we love. But unfortunately for me, my wing fullback positions are just starting to get a little bit stacked, and he's going to be squeezed out for me. And I really need somebody who's going to play pretty much week in and week out. So I'm just not sure I can afford to carry Trey Fuller if he's only playing on the bye rounds. Ethan Strange, kind of like Trey Fuller, he's really a hold for this week and then a serious consideration for sell next week. I think the disappointing thing for Ethan Strange is his scores have really flatlined. He's really not accelerating in terms of money making. He's kind of peaked. I think that's pretty much where he's at this particular point in time. And I'm really leveraging him just to get through this round 13 period. And I think he's another player that we will look to move on from next week. But for me, this week, he is 100% a hold. Blaze Talungi, unfortunately, he's been benched with Clint Gutherson coming back. He does have that 11 break even. He may not even get any time on the park this week, and that's probably the big concern with Talungi. Now, I'm hoping that they bring Gutherson back and ease him into it, which would give some time on the park to Talungi. It would allow you to exploit this 11 break even, which he should be able to smash. You make a little bit of money and then perhaps sell next week. I think that's the play with Talungi. So for me, again, he is a hold. Adam Fanua-Blake, I'm really surprised at the number of people looking to move on from AFB. You know, when you step back and look at it, he is the number one forward in the game right now. Look at these scores. He's just achieving consistently good results. Yes, this last one was a bit of an anomaly, but typically speaking, he is absolutely pumping out some high numbers, and I'm pretty confident he'll be back in round 14 and continue doing what he does best. And when we look at the Warriors' schedule, they're about to go on a pretty decent run of games. So I think don't move off Adam Fanua-Blake unless you're absolutely desperate to do it. For me, he is 100% a hold. Harry Grant. The thing that we need to remember about Harry Grant this week is obviously the Stormer out on the bye. Harry Grant's off playing State of Origin. But coming into round 14, someone like a Harry Grant who will probably only play maybe 30 to 40 minutes in State of Origin is probably one of the most likely players to back up next week. Just because we know he has such an amazing motor. And of course, he's the captain of the Storm. So for me, it just makes sense that the Harry Grant is a hold. His scores have been pretty good. And I think Harry Grant is definitely going to be one of those players that you do want in your team for the run home. So if you can hold Harry Grant, I think absolutely this week, hold him. Let's see how he pulls out from State of Origin and make some decisions from there. In terms of the sells, there's probably no major surprise here. I've got Nico Hines as a sell. He's over $1 million. He's carrying that calf injury. His break even is astronomical. And regardless of whether you hold him or sell him, I think he's going to start losing a tremendously large amount of cash. And I think there are some better options over the next few weeks. He's going to miss a whole bunch of games. And I think as long as Nico is out, you're losing money and you're not generating points. So I think at least for the next 5 or 6 weeks, consider getting a stronger performing player in who's going to make you money and generate points. And I think if he's then available come round 19, 20, then that's when you'd start to look at bringing Nico Hines back in. Next up, we've got Kickow there. He's injured. He's broken his finger. He's out for 4 weeks. So unfortunately, I think you've got to move on. Jack Bird, he's got the ankle injury. He's out for a little while. Egan Butcher, also injured. I think he's out for the remainder of the season, so you've got to move on from him. Sean Lane has now been moved to the bench, and I just can't see him getting the minutes. So for me, he is also a sell. And Joey Lussick has probably been one of the more disappointing players this season, really underperforming and not generating any significant points or making us money. He's now been punted back to the reserves. And for me, he is a sell. So there you go. Look, that's the buy, hold, sell for round 13. Hopefully you're not sitting around looking like this guy and that you have everything under control. I should be able to pump out a full 13 this week, and hopefully we can make some ranks. I'll have some of those videos out either late this evening or early tomorrow, just in terms of both results and our trades for the week. But good luck with your tipping, good luck with your fantasy or your super coach. Have an amazing weekend of footy. And as always, guys, if you've liked the video, please smash that like button for me. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.